The night I learned my husband had buried me, I was standing 6 feet from my own grave. There was only an empty casket and 23 people pretending to mourn.
Woman who was still alive. I watched from behind the rain-streaked window of a caretaker's shed at Green Hollow Cemetery, outside Richmond, Virginia. My husband, Daniel, stood beside the grave in a black suit. His head was bowed. One hand rested on our 14-year-old daughter Lily's shoulder. The other held the hand of my best friend, Claire Bennett, not secretly, not accidentally. Their fingers were locked together like they had been practicing for this moment. Then the minister said, "We'll lay Evelyn Mercer to rest." And Daniel began to cry. I almost laughed. Daniel could never cry when my father died. He could not cry when my mother spent her final night calling my name. But there he was, performing grief beautifully for an audience. While I stood in the dark with mud on my shoes and a flash drive taped beneath my shirt. 3 days earlier, the police had found my car at the bottom of the James River. The driver's door was open. My purse was trapped beneath the passenger seat. Blood matching mine stained the steering wheel. Everyone believed I had died. That was exactly what Daniel wanted. And for the next 72 hours, it was exactly what I needed him to believe. My name is Evelyn Mercer. I was 42 years old, a wife, a mother, and the financial director of Mercer Urban Renewal, the construction company my father had built from a 2-man crew and 1 borrowed truck. I had spent 18 years keeping that company alive. Daniel liked to introduce himself as its president. He liked people to think he had created it. He had not. My father had given Daniel a title because I loved him. He gave him an office because I trusted him. And on the day my father died, he left 51% of the company to me. Daniel never forgave either of us. At first, I did not see the betrayal. Betrayal rarely arrives wearing a mask. It uses familiar voices. It knows which coffee you drink and where you hide the spare key. It kisses your forehead before it starts measuring your coffin. For 6 months, Daniel told me the company was struggling. Material costs were rising. 2 city contracts had been delayed. Investors were nervous. He showed me charts and reports. He stayed late at the office and came home smelling like expensive bourbon. Claire comforted me through all of it. She had been my closest friend since college. She knew every bad thing that had ever happened to me. After my mother died, Claire slept on my couch for a week. When Lily was born early, Claire sat beside the incubator and promised that my daughter would be strong. Now she stood at my grave holding my husband's hand. The first warning came on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing vendor payments when I found a transfer for $840,000. The payment had gone to a consulting company called North Lake Strategies. I had never heard of it. The invoice said, "Environmental risk analysis," but our environmental work was handled by another firm. I searched our contract archive. Nothing. I checked the vendor address. It led to a mailbox store in Delaware. When I asked Daniel, he smiled. "You worry too much," he said. North Lake belongs to one of Victor Shaw's partners. It helped us secure the East Bell project. Victor Shaw was a developer with city connections and a smile that made every promise sound dirty. My father refused to work with him. Daniel had started inviting him to private dinners after Dad died. Why didn't I approve the payment? I asked. Daniel leaned against my desk. Because you were with Lily at the doctor. I signed for both of us. You cannot sign my name. His smile disappeared for half a second. We're married, Evie. That answer frightened me more than anger would have. That evening, I called Claire. She listened quietly as I described the transfer. Then she told me I was exhausted. She reminded me that grief could make people suspicious. She suggested I take a weekend away while she helped Daniel straighten out the paperwork. I thanked her. The next morning, North Lake Strategies received another payment. This one was for $1.2 million. I began investigating without telling anyone. I copied bank records. I searched corporate registrations. North Lake led to 3 more shell companies. Each company had received money from Mercer Urban Renewal. Each company disappeared after the transfer. Over 2 years, nearly $11 million had vanished. Then I found the connection that changed everything. All 4 companies used the same registered agent, Bennett Administrative Services. Claire's maiden name was Bennett. I stared at my computer until the numbers blurred. I wanted an innocent explanation. I wanted to believe some stranger shared her name. But a property search showed that Bennett Administrative Services was registered to a condominium in Baltimore. The condo belonged to Claire. That afternoon, I followed her. She left her law office at 5:30, drove past her own apartment, and entered the underground garage of the Jefferson Hotel. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later. I waited across the street in my car. At 7, they came out together. Daniel put his hand against the small of her back. Claire lifted her face, and he kissed her beneath the hotel awning. The rain began just after that. I remember because I sat there until the drops covered the windshield and turned them into 2 shadows pressed together. My husband was sleeping with my best friend. Together, they were stealing my father's company. But even then, I did not understand the worst part. I drove home before Daniel. I washed my face. I helped Lily with her history homework. When Daniel walked in, I asked if his meeting had gone well. "Long and boring," he said, kissing my cheek. I smiled back. For the next 9 days, I lived beside a stranger. I recorded conversations. I backed up contracts. I met secretly with my father's former attorney, Samuel Price. He was 71, careful, and loyal to Dad in a way that made him suspicious of everyone else. When I showed him the transfers, his face hardened. "Your father feared this," Samuel said. "Feared what?" Instead of answering, he removed an old brass key from his desk. A number was stamped into it 214. "Your father gave me this a week before he died. He said that if Daniel ever tried to force you out, I should give you the second key." "Second key to what?" I never told me. The key belonged to a private vault company downtown. Box 214 contained a handwritten letter from my father, a ledger, and a small digital recorder. His letter began with one sentence. "Evie, if you are reading this, Daniel has finally shown you who he is." My hand shook as I read. Dad had discovered that Daniel was negotiating with Victor Shaw to purchase condemned properties through hidden companies, force long-time residents out, and resell the land to Mercer Urban Renewal at inflated prices. Dad planned to remove Daniel from the business. He died 2 days before the board meeting. The official cause was a heart attack. The recorder contained a conversation between Dad and Daniel. Daniel begged for another chance. Dad refused. Near the end, Daniel said, "If Evelyn takes control, everything we built is gone." Dad answered, "You didn't build it, she did." Then the recording stopped. The ledger listed properties, payments, and initials. DM appeared beside several transfers. CB appeared beside the shell companies. VS appeared beside city, permit numbers. There was enough to expose theft, but not enough to prove what happened to Dad. Samuel told me to call federal investigators immediately. I almost did. Then Lily called. Her voice was trembling. "Mom, Dad says you need to come home. He found something in your office." Behind her voice, I heard Daniel say, "Tell her we know about the copies." The line went dead. I drove toward home. But halfway there, a black SUV struck the back of my car. I spun across 2 lanes and crashed through a guardrail. The front of my car hung over the riverbank. A man approached my window. He wore a gray raincoat, I recognized him as one of Victor Shaw's security men. I locked the doors, grabbed the flash drive from my purse, and crawled through the passenger side as he smashed the driver's window. I slid down the muddy bank seconds before he reached me. The river was high and violent. I could hear him above me, calling someone. "The car is here," he said. She went over. I understood then. This was not intimidation. They intended to kill me, recover the evidence, and call it an accident. So I gave them the accident they wanted. I cut my palm on a broken bottle, smeared blood inside the car, left my purse beneath the seat, released the brake, and watched the vehicle roll into the river. Then I walked 2 miles through the woods to an abandoned service station and called Samuel from a pay phone. Only one thought kept me moving. Lily was inside the house with Daniel. But Samuel had already sent a retired detective named Rosa Alvarez to collect her. Rosa told Lily that I had authorized a school security transfer because of a threat. By the time Daniel realized she was gone, Lily was hidden at Samuel's sister's farmhouse in Pennsylvania. Daniel reported me missing that night. The next morning, he identified my blood in the recovered car, and 3 days later, he buried an empty coffin. From the caretaker's shed, I watched him accept condolences. Then Claire leaned toward him and whispered something. Daniel looked at my grave and smiled. That smile burned the last piece of love out of me. I turned away from the window. They believed I was dead. They believed my shares would pass to Daniel. They believed the evidence had drowned with me. They were wrong about all 3 things. My father had left me a second key. Now I was going to use it to lock every one of them inside the truth. Part TW. Moanech TED Kedu R for the next 2 weeks. I lived as a dead woman. Samuel placed me in a vacant apartment above an old pharmacy he owned in Fredericksburg. Rosa brought groceries after midnight. I cut my hair to my shoulders, dyed it dark brown, and stopped looking into mirrors. Lily knew I was alive, but we could not speak freely. Daniel had police officers watching Samuel's office and private investigators following Claire's enemies. One careless call could lead them to my daughter. Every evening, Rosa delivered a memory card with new recordings. Before my disappearance, I had installed a legal security system in our company offices after a series of equipment thefts. Daniel knew about the cameras in the hallways. He did not know that my father had placed an audio recorder inside the old brass desk lamp in his private conference room. The lamp had remained there for 12 years. Death made people careless. On the first recording, Daniel and Claire opened champagne in his office. To Evelyn, Claire said, "She finally did something useful." Daniel laughed. I listened twice. Not because I had missed the words, but because I needed to hear the laugh clearly enough to kill every doubt inside me. They discussed my shares. My will left everything to Lily, with Daniel managing the trust until she turned 25. As Lily's guardian, Daniel expected to control the company. But there was a problem. My body had not been recovered. Without proof of death, the court would not transfer ownership quickly. Victor Shaw wanted the East Bell deal completed in 10 days. "Then find a judge," Daniel said. Victor's voice came through the recording. "Judges are not vending machines, and the federal grant review starts next month. We need Mercer's land before anyone looks at the purchase trail." Claire said, "Evelyn's electronic approval is enough." "Her token is missing," Daniel replied. I touched the flash drive beneath my shirt. It was not an ordinary drive. It contained my encrypted company signature, required for any property purchase above $5 million. They had tried to murder me for it. Now they needed it so badly that they might expose everything while searching. Samuel and I created a plan. We would leak a message suggesting I had left the token in a storage unit. Rosa would follow whoever came for it. But before we could act, a news report appeared on television. Police had found a woman's body 30 miles downriver. The body matched my height and aged. It was badly damaged, but a bracelet engraved with Lily's birthday was wrapped around its wrist. I owned that bracelet. It had disappeared from my jewelry box months earlier. Daniel identified the body as mine. I watched him leave the medical examiner's office, surrounded by reporters. He covered his face and asked for privacy. The court issued my death certificate the following afternoon. Who was she? I asked Rosa. We don't know yet. They killed someone else to make me legally dead. Rosa did not answer. She did not need to. For the first time since the crash, revenge stopped feeling like anger. It became a duty. An unknown woman had been stripped of her name, so Daniel could steal mine. I promised that I would find out who she was. Our false storage message went out the next morning. Samuel called Daniel and said he had discovered a payment receipt among my estate papers. The receipt showed that I rented Unit 317 at Rivergate Storage. There was no Unit 317. Rosa placed cameras around an unused corridor and waited. At 11 that night, Claire arrived with Victor's security man. They carried bolt cutters, plastic bags, and a small bottle of bleach. Rosa photographed everything. More importantly, she followed them when they left. They drove to an abandoned textile factory owned by North Lake Strategies. Inside, Rosa saw dozens of boxes being loaded into a truck. She captured license plates and called a federal contact she trusted, Special Agent Marcus Reed. Reed stopped the truck on a commercial safety violation. The boxes contained files from Mercer Urban Renewal, city planning maps, forged tenant notices, and cash payment records. But the driver claimed he knew nothing. The documents pointed toward shell companies, not Daniel. Victor had bit layers between himself and every crime. We needed someone inside. That person arrived by accident. His name was Noah Briggs. He was 29 and worked in our information technology department. One night, he noticed that someone was deleting archived email from my account. He restored a copy and found a message I had scheduled before the crash. If anything happens to me, do not trust Daniel Mercer or Claire Bennett. Take the server back up to Samuel Price. Noah appeared at Samuel's office, carrying 2 hard drives in a backpack. Samuel brought him to me. When Noah saw me, he dropped the backpack. You're dead. For now, I said. He showed us deleted emails between Claire and Victor. Most used code names, but the pattern was clear. Claire created shell companies. Victor purchased homes through threats and forged liens. Daniel directed Mercer Urban Renewal to buy the assembled land at 6 times its value. They split the profit. One email mentioned my father. Claire had written, "The old man has the original ledger. Dee says the heart problem will resolve itself before Friday." The email was dated 2 days before Dad died. I felt the room tilt beneath me. "Can you prove who Dee is?" I asked. Noah shook his head. "Not from this. They used an anonymous relay." The next email was sent after Dad's funeral. "Problem resolved. E inherits, but she trusts me. We proceed slowly." Claire had been comforting me while writing those words. I wanted to walk into her office and put the printed email on her desk. I wanted to see fear take control of her face. Rosa stopped me. "Evidence first," she said. "Satisfaction later." She was right. We began building a case that could survive expensive lawyers. Noah cloned the company server. Samuel traced property deeds. Agent Reed quietly reopened questions surrounding my father's death. I listened to the lamp recordings every night. On the 5th night, I heard Lily's voice. My daughter had returned to Richmond without telling us. Daniel had announced a public memorial at the company headquarters and asked her to speak. Lily told Samuel's sister that she needed clothing from home. Instead, she took a bus south and walked into Daniel's office. "Where have you been?" Daniel demanded, trying to understand why Mom left. Lily replied, "I knew that tone." It was the calm voice she used when she was frightened, but refused to show it. "Your mother was under pressure," Daniel said. "She made choices we may never understand. You said it was an accident." It was. "Then why did you say she left?" Silence filled the recording. Daniel asked whether Samuel had given her anything. Lily said no. He asked about a flash drive. She said she had never seen it. Then Claire entered. Her voice became sweet. "Honey, we're your family now." Lily answered, "You were holding my father's hand at Mom's funeral." I almost smiled despite my fear. Daniel sent Lily into the hallway. Then he told Claire that my daughter knew something. "She has Evelyn's stubbornness," Claire said. Daniel lowered his voice. "Then we handle her before the board vote." My blood turned cold. I called Rosa, but she was already moving. By the time she reached headquarters, Lily was gone. Daniel's car was gone too. 20 minutes later, I received a message on the private phone only 4 people knew existed. It was a photograph of Lily sitting in the back seat of a car. Her eyes were closed. Below it were 7 words: "Bring the key, or bury your daughter." The dead woman they had created was no longer useful. Daniel knew I was alive. Tichi price off a die Gichtar. The message ordered me to come alone to an unfinished apartment tower on the East Bell property. Midnight. No police. Bring the signature token and my father's ledger. Samuel said it was a trap. Of course it's a trap, I answered. But Lily is inside it. Rosa studied the photograph. Reflected in the window behind Lily was a red sign with a white number 7. She recognized it as the 7th floor of Mercer Tower 2, a project Daniel had suspended months earlier. Agent Reed wanted to send a tactical team. I refused. Daniel had cameras around the site and Victor's men at both roads. If they saw police, they could move Lily or kill her. So we gave Daniel what he expected: a grieving, frightened mother carrying the only objects he needed. But the token in my pocket was a copy. Noah had built it to record every computer it touched and transmit the data to a remote server. The ledger was also a reproduction. Between 2 glued pages, Rosa placed a tracking chip and a microphone. At 11:45, I drove my father's old pickup toward East Bell. The neighborhood had once held brick row houses, a grocery store, 2 churches, and a playground painted blue. Victor's companies had emptied most of it. Windows were boarded. Doors carried red condemnation notices. Families who had lived there for generations were scattered across the city. Mercer Tower rose above the ruins like a monument to theft. I parked beneath a work light. Victor's security man searched me and took my phone. He did not find the thin transmitter sewn into my coat collar. On the 7th floor, Daniel waited beside an open wall. Beyond him was a 40-foot drop. Claire stood near Lily, holding a pistol. My daughter was awake. Her wrists were tied, but she looked at me without surprise. "I knew you weren't dead," she said. Daniel's head snapped toward her. "You knew. Mom would never leave me." With those words almost broke me. I forced myself to stay still. "Let her go," I said. "I brought everything." Daniel held out his hand. I placed the token and ledger on a concrete block halfway between us. "Lily first." Claire laughed. "You still think this is a negotiation?" I looked at her. "I think you've spent your whole life wanting what belonged to me. My family. My company. My husband. Tell me, Claire, did any of it feel valuable before it was mine?" Her face changed. "That was what I wanted. Angry people explain themselves." "You had everything," she said. "Your father gave you a company. Professors gave you opportunities. Daniel chose you. I did twice the work and stood beside you while doors opened. So you killed my father. Daniel stepped forward. Don't answer her. Claire ignored him. Your father was already sick. That isn't an answer. He was going to destroy all of us over a few properties. $11 million and hundreds of stolen homes. Business has victims. Evelyn, your father understood that until he became sentimental. The microphone was transmitting every word. I turned to Daniel. What did you give him? Daniel said nothing. Claire smiled at him. Tell her. She crossed a river to hear it. Shut up. He switched your father's heart medication, Claire said. 1 pill in the morning. 1 pill at night. The great Arthur Mercer died at his desk, and nobody even asked why. Daniel struck her across the face. The pistol fell from Claire's hand and slid toward Lily. My daughter kicked it through the open wall. It disappeared into the darkness below. I ran to her. Daniel grabbed the ledger and token while Victor's man caught my arm. Then every light in the building went out. Noah had entered the construction controls remotely. In the darkness, I drove my elbow backward and heard the guard gasp. Lily rolled toward my voice. I found her wrists and cut the plastic ties with a blade hidden in my watch band. Emergency lights flashed red. Claire was gone. Daniel was running toward the stairwell with the evidence. Rose's voice came through my collar transmitter. Agents are entering. Get down. A gunfire cracked from the floor below. Victor's men had seen the federal vehicles. The plan was collapsing into noise. Lily and I crawled behind a stack of drywall. The security man reached us and lifted a metal pipe. Before he could swing it, Claire struck him from behind with a wooden board. He fell. For one strange second, Claire and I stared at each other. I just saved your life, she said. You kidnapped my daughter. Daniel was going to kill all of us. She grabbed my sleeve. He has a boat at Carter's Marina. Victor keeps cash and passports there. Help me leave, and I will testify. I wanted justice, not another body. I told her to follow us. We reached the stairwell as agents came upward. Then Claire shoved Lily into me and ran in the opposite direction. She had never intended to surrender. She only needed us to block the agents. Daniel escaped through a service elevator. Victor fled in a separate vehicle. Agents arrested 3 guards. But the 2 men at the center of the scheme disappeared. Claire vanished too. At the hospital, doctors found a sedative in Lily's blood, but no serious injury. I sat beside her bed until sunrise, holding her hand. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? For letting him fool me. For putting the company before us. For not seeing Claire. Lily opened her eyes. You saw them when it mattered. You children should not have to forgive their parents for surviving. But she did. And her forgiveness hurt more than blame. Agent Reed entered at 7. The microphone had captured Claire's confession and Daniel's reaction. It was powerful evidence. But Daniel's lawyers would argue that Claire was angry, unstable, and lying. The fake token had transmitted files from a laptop at the construction site, including property records and payoff lists. There was still no direct record of Daniel changing Dad's medication. Then Reed told me about the body from the river. Her name was Marisol Vega. She was 38, a hotel housekeeper, and the mother of 2 sons. She had disappeared after finishing a night shift at the Jefferson Hotel, the same hotel where Daniel met Claire. Security footage showed Marisol entering an elevator with Claire. Claire had chosen a woman who looked enough like me to become my corpse. Marisol's sons had spent a week believing their mother abandoned them. I met them that afternoon. Mateo was 16. Luis was 12. I told them their mother had not left. I promised that the people responsible would be found. Mateo looked at me with exhausted eyes. People like them always get away. Not this time, I said. But as I spoke, a television in the hospital lobby showed breaking news. Daniel had released a statement. He claimed I had staged my death after embezzling company money. He said grief had caused me to kidnap Lily and invent wild accusations. His attorney displayed photographs of my bloody car, the false ledger, and messages taken out of context. Half the country believed him by dinner. The company board suspended me. Banks froze my accounts. Reporters surrounded the hospital. Daniel had tried to kill me. Now he was murdering my name. And he was doing it with evidence I had carried into his trap. That night, I received an email from my father's old account. The message contained no words, only a photograph. It showed Daniel standing beside Dad's desk on the morning he died. In Daniel's hand was a prescription bottle. The message had been sent by Claire. She wanted to make a deal. Part faux you are. Tichi frying diablo sol divarion, Claire instructed me to come to the chapel where we had attended college. She chose a place filled with our shared memories, as if nostalgia could protect her. Rosa fitted me with a wire. Agent Reed placed officers nearby. This time, I followed their plan. Claire sat in the last pew wearing a blonde wig and a coat too large for her. Without makeup, she looked older. A bruise darkened one side of her face where Daniel had struck her. "You came," she said. "You have proof." "I have everything." She held up a phone. Years earlier, she had secretly installed cameras in Dad's office to learn where he stored his ledger. One camera recorded Daniel replacing Dad's medication. Another captured Victor entering the office after Dad died and removing documents. "Why keep it?" I asked. "Insurance." "Against your lover." Daniel was never my lover. He was an investment. The answer was so cold that I finally understood Claire. She did not love Daniel. She did not even hate me in the ordinary way. People were doors to her. Once a door opened, she stopped seeing it. "Give me the original files," I said. "I want immunity, $2 million, and a flight out of the country." "You murdered Marisol Vega." Claire's eyes moved toward a side door. "Victor's man did that." You chose her." "I made a mistake." "A mistake is taking the wrong coat." "You stole a mother's life and tied my bracelet to her wrist." Claire leaned closer. "If you want Daniel, you need me." She was right about one thing. The recordings could prove my father's murder. But I would not buy them by helping her escape justice. So I lied. "I can arrange the money," I said. "But I need to verify the files." Claire relaxed. She gave me a memory card containing short samples. The original files were on a server controlled by Victor. His boat carried a satellite connection and an encrypted computer. Daniel planned to meet him at Carter's Marina that night. They would leave through the Chesapeake Bay before dawn. Claire wanted me to transfer money at the marina. In return, she would unlock the server. Reed heard everything through the wire. The moment Claire left the chapel, officers arrested her. She screamed my name as they put her in the car. "You promised." I walked close enough for her to hear me. "You promised my daughter you were family." Agent Reed obtained a warrant for the marina, but a judge delayed approval to board Victor's boat. Victor's attorneys claimed it was registered through a foreign corporation. Every hour mattered. Noah examined the sample files and found hidden location data. The original server was not on the boat. It was beneath the old Mercer warehouse by the river, the first building my father ever purchased. Daniel and Victor were going to the marina as a distraction. I knew the warehouse better than anyone. Beneath the loading floor was a storm shelter Dad built after Hurricane Isabel. The shelter had its own power and a steel door. Daniel must have converted it into a private records room. Reed sent one team to the marina and another to the warehouse. I was ordered to remain at the command vehicle. I did not. The rear entrance used a mechanical lock my father had never replaced. Key 214 opened it. That was the real purpose of the second key. Inside, I heard voices below the floor. Daniel and Victor were arguing. "Claire has been arrested," Daniel said. "She'll trade everything," Victor replied. "Then we erase everything." Through a gap in the boards, I saw Victor pour fuel across the server room. Daniel stood beside a metal cabinet filled with cash. "My money first," Daniel said. Victor laughed. "You still think this belongs to you?" Daniel pulled a gun. Their partnership ended exactly as it had begun, with greed. I called Reed and whispered the location. Then I moved toward the shelter stairs. A loose board creaked beneath my foot. Victor looked up. "We have company." I ran. A bullet struck the wall beside me. Daniel came up the stairs and blocked the exit. For the first time since my funeral, we stood face to face alone. He looked thinner. His expensive suit was wrinkled. But his eyes held the same confidence that had once convinced me he could never hurt me. "You should have stayed dead," he said. "You should have learned how my father built this place." I pushed a red emergency switch beside the door. Steel fire shutters dropped between the warehouse sections. The sprinkler pumps activated. Water flooded the shelter, washing fuel away before Victor could ignite it. A shutter trapped Victor beside the server racks. Daniel and I were sealed in the loading bay. He raised the gun. "Open it." The controls reset from outside. "You're lying." "You never listened when Dad explained the building." He pressed the gun against my chest. His hand was shaking. "Give me the key." "Which one?" "The key to the warehouse, the company, or the life you thought you stole." His face twisted. "I gave you 20 years. You took 20 years. Your father treated me like dirt. He saw you clearly." Daniel struck me with the gun. I fell against a stack of wooden pallets. Blood filled my mouth. Then he began talking. He said Dad had planned to humiliate him at the board meeting. He said changing the pills was only meant to make Dad sick. He said the heart attack was an accident. He said my crash was Victor's plan, Marisol was Claire's plan, and Lily's kidnapping was everyone's fault but his. Every guilty person believes responsibility belongs to the nearest accomplice. What Daniel did not know was that the warehouse emergency system recorded audio after an alarm. My father installed it to document workplace accidents. Daniel was confessing into 3 ceiling microphones. Sirens approached outside. He heard them and pulled me to my feet. He planned to use me as a shield. When the fire shutter began rising, he wrapped one arm around my neck and pointed the gun toward the opening. Rosa stood on the other side. "Drop it, Daniel." He tightened his grip. "Back away." I remembered every morning I had made his coffee. Every lie I had forgiven before I knew it was a lie. Every time he called my caution weakness. Then I drove the brass key into the back of his hand. The gun fell. Rosa crossed the distance in 2 steps and forced him to the floor. Victor was arrested in the flooded server room. Agents recovered the original video's ledgers, property deeds, and records of payments to city officials. At Carter's Marina, officers found passports, cash, and the gray raincoat worn by the man who attacked my car. By sunrise, Daniel, Victor, and Claire were all in custody. I thought revenge would feel like fire. Instead, it felt like the first quiet breath after nearly drowning. But justice had one final surprise waiting for me. The server contained a document, signed by my father one day before he died. It transferred a hidden block of company shares to a trust. The trust did not belong to me. It belonged to the families of East Bell. Partiv. Heft Dully Bueld After Ruim. The trials lasted 14 months. Claire accepted a plea agreement only after prosecutors showed her the chapel recording. She testified against Daniel and Victor, but the judge rejected her request for a light sentence. Her role in Marisol's murder and Lily's kidnapping could not be traded away. Victor Shaw was convicted of racketeering, fraud, kidnapping, conspiracy, and murder. The city seized his properties. 3 officials who had accepted bribes followed him to prison. Daniel fought until the end. He wore dark suits and looked at the jury with wounded eyes. His lawyers called me unstable. They replayed video of me entering the East Bell Tower with false evidence. They suggested I had manipulated Claire and staged my disappearance to seize the company. Then prosecutors played the warehouse recording. The courtroom heard Daniel say he changed Dad's medication. They heard him blame Victor for my attempted murder. They heard him admit that he knew Claire planned to use Marisol's body. For 20 minutes, Daniel listened to his own voice destroy every lie he had built. The jury took less than 4 hours. Guilty on every major count. Before sentencing, the judge allowed me to speak. Daniel stared straight ahead as I approached the podium. I had imagined this moment during every sleepless night. I had prepared angry words. I wanted to tell him that he was small, that my father had been right, that Claire never loved him. But when I saw him, I felt no need to wound him. The truth had already done more damage than I could. You tried to take my company, I said. You tried to take my daughter, my name, and my life. But the thing you destroyed was the only gift I gave you freely. My trust. You will spend years blaming everyone else for this. I hope one day you understand that the locked door around you was built by your own choices. Daniel finally looked at me. There was no apology in his eyes, only disbelief that I had survived him. The judge sentenced him to life in federal prison without the possibility of release. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. I walked past them and found Matteo and Louise waiting with their aunt. A scholarship fund created from seized assets would pay for both boys' education. It was not payment for their mother. Nothing could be. It was simply one promise kept. Matteo hugged me. You were right, he said. They didn't get away. Your mother helped stop them, I told him. The bracelet Claire placed on Marisol had carried traces from the hotel laundry. Those traces led investigators to security footage, then to Claire. The object meant to erase Marisol became evidence that restored her name. Mercer Urban Renewal nearly collapsed during the scandal. Banks withdrew. Contracts disappeared. Half the board resigned. For a while, I considered selling what remained and leaving Virginia with Lily. Then Samuel showed me Dad's trust document. Years earlier, he had quietly purchased a 2% block of non-voting shares. After his death, those shares would gain voting rights if the company was ever convicted of participating in property fraud. Ownership would then transfer to a community trust, representing East Bell residents. Dad knew he might not live long enough to stop Daniel, so he built a consequence Daniel could not see. The East Bell Trust became the company's second, largest shareholder. I remained the largest. Together, we removed the old board and elected residents, employees, and housing advocates. Our first decision was to cancel Mercer Tower. We used recovered money to rebuild the row houses, reopen the grocery store, and create affordable apartments on the empty lots. Families who had been forced out received the first right to return. Victor's waterfront mansion was sold to finance a community health center. Claire's Baltimore condominium became transitional housing for women leaving dangerous homes. Daniel's private golf property became a public park. That last decision was Lily's idea. He hated strangers walking on his grass, she said. It was the first time I heard her joke about him. We laughed until we both cried. Healing did not arrive like justice. Justice had dates, verdicts, and locked doors. Healing was quieter and less obedient. Some mornings, Lily woke from dreams about the tower. Some nights, I heard Daniel's laugh from the funeral recording and checked every lock in the house. We went to counseling. We learned that surviving something together does not mean recovering at the same speed. I learned to listen when Lily needed silence. She learned that my fear was not control. Slowly, our home stopped feeling like a place we defended and became a place where we lived. One spring afternoon, nearly 2 years after the empty funeral, Lily and I visited Dad's grave. My false headstone had been removed. I kept a small piece of it in my office, the corner where the stonecutter had carved the first letter of my name. Not because I enjoyed remembering death, but because it reminded me that another person's story about me did not have to become my ending. We placed fresh flowers beside Dad. "Do you think Grandpa knew all this would happen?" Lily asked. "No," I said. "He just knew people reveal themselves when they believe nobody can stop them." And the key. I took the old brass key from my pocket. The blood had been cleaned from it, but Daniel's grip had bent one edge. He knew I would need a way back inside. The following week, we opened the Arthur Mercer Community Center in East Bell. Hundreds of residents attended. Mateo and Louis stood in the front row. Rosa came wearing a dress instead of her usual leather jacket. Samuel complained about the folding chairs and cried through the entire ceremony. I did not give a long speech. After everything that had happened, I no longer trusted long promises. I said, "This company once helped powerful people steal homes. From today forward, every building we raise must repair more than the ground beneath it. It must repair trust." Then I handed the ceremonial scissors to an elderly woman named Beatrice Cole. Victor's company had forced her from the house where she raised 4 children. She had returned to East Bell that morning. Beatrice cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered, and for a moment I could almost feel my father beside me. Later, Lily and I walked through the new park. Children were running across grass that Daniel once guarded from strangers. At the center stood a small iron sculpture, made from beams recovered from Mercer Tower. The artist had shaped them into an open door. Lily read the words engraved beneath it. "Mat, ice, tukan, be read aren, be siurak g." She slipped her hand into mine. "Was it worth it?" she asked. I knew what she meant. The investigation, the danger, the months of public humiliation, the trials, the knowledge that the man I loved had murdered my father and tried to erase me. "Justice was worth it," I said. "But I wish you had never needed to be brave." She leaned against my shoulder. "I learned from you." I looked at the open door, the rebuilt homes beyond it, and the families returning to streets that had almost been stolen forever. Daniel believed power meant deciding who could enter and who had to leave. Claire believed power meant owning the secrets that could ruin people. Victor believed power meant buying every official, building, and life in his way. They were all wrong. Power was telling the truth when a lie would keep you safe. It was protecting someone whose name the world had forgotten. It was turning stolen land into homes and a grave into proof that you were still alive. They had buried an empty coffin because they thought my story was over. But a grave is only an ending when the person inside it stays silent. I did not stay silent. I came back with my father's key, my daughter's courage, and the truth they could not drown. And when the last prison door closed behind them, I finally understood the best revenge was not watching them lose everything. It was building something beautiful from everything they failed to take. Teach Ian.